A really lovely painter was scammed by a very nasty customer. Really premeditated, worked out, completely cold and very nasty. And I don't want it to happen to you, and that's the purpose of this video, to tell you what happened, how it happened, and how you can protect yourself. It was absolutely horrible. This customer got loads of work done and just wasn't going to pay, and did it in a planned way. The customer was very rich, evidently had access to very good legal advice, had done this before, and probably is still doing this. So the customer showed the painter decorator around their very large house, very nicely done, lots of fixture and fittings, done very well. And the painter thought, wow, I've got an amazing customer here, an amazing job. And in hindsight, the painter now realized that he was being baited. He was basically being showing this incredible stuff he could be doing for this customer, massive amounts of work, making massive amounts of money. And the painter actually realizes that the customer was appealing to his greed. And because of this, he gave this person far more credit from a financial point of view than he would ever have done. Did far more work before demanding money, and was really seduced by that. So he realized how wrong he was by being sort of having this done to him. And there was already one warning sign, which is that he could see there'd been another painter there recently. And he asked about this, and the customer said, yes, the person wasn't free anymore. And often when that's the case, actually, sometimes it's that the other painter realizes that was a bad customer. If it was a really good paying customer and genuinely, he would be free. He'd be doing that work instead of another one. So that was the first warning sign. And so he did loads of work. The customer had got the materials himself. I personally find from my painting decorating business that when the customer has got the paints themselves, that normally they're a bit more money cautious because they know if the painter gets it, they've got to make a markup on it. They don't quite have the same control. And often a customer will say, oh, I've got loads of money to spend. But more often than not all the time, when the customer's getting the paint themselves, actually, they're being a bit more financially careful and not as spendthrift as they may pretend they are. And so they did the job, and they did a large amount of work before doing an invoice. They should have done it in steps, but they just kind of let themselves be seduced by this and sent the invoice, and it wasn't paid. And chased, and it wasn't paid. And then on calling the customer a bit more sort of seriously about being paid, the customer said they'd done loads of damage, done loads of things wrong, horrible things, they said, scandalous in the sense that the painter had done a lovely job and hadn't done this, and the painter didn't know what to do. And so, very fortunately, he had another customer who was a lawyer, done work for, and a lot of goodwill from this lawyer towards this painter, and sat the painter down and went, okay, where are the terms and conditions that the customer agreed to before joining? There aren't any. Oh. Where's the notes of the conversations that you've had? Because, you normally have conversations each day, and then you sort of you have notes and you send these notes to the customer to say hi, just to make sure everything's as we agreed and I haven't made any mistakes. You don't say it's in case you want to sue them later. There aren't any. Are there any before and after pictures and pictures of the work done each day, showing each individual bit you've done that day and all the rest of it, and showing where there were problems and maybe things like that, so you can sort of show why things happened and issues with the building that meant actually this could only be done a certain way? And he showed the pictures on his phone, and they weren't that good and they didn't really show much. So the lawyer was like, oh. And just to say, I'm not a lawyer, I run a painting and decorating business. I'm not an accountant as well. So you need to get your own legal advice on these things, and own accountancy advice. I can just tell you what I was told about how it happened and what I saw and have been told. Because I work with this painter a lot, and so we've been talking about this. So it was what the lawyer called hearsay, which is basically one person says thing against somebody else and there's nothing. So the first thing the lawyer said is, okay, you need to keep communicating with the customer, but do it in writing. You can do it in email, or the person chose WhatsApp because you can see that the history, and did it in writing. And was communicating, and the lawyer basically said the more you communicate, after a while, hopefully the customer will say things to discredit themselves. The phrase he used is you give someone enough rope to hang themselves. If it's a liar, after they've done it a lot, they sort of contradict themselves, and that would help in court. And one of the things that happened is that there was an electrician who was also working on it, and because it was quite a small community in the area, the painter managed to find the electrician, and the electrician was having the same problems, and they managed to corroborate how the stories didn't add up because of what was being blamed. One of the things was that the paint had got into like the electrics because it was done so badly with the paint, and that had caused damage. Loads of other really scandalous things that weren't true, but that could be corroborated from the things the electrician was told and so on. And the lawyer also told him to make notes. So he wrote notes, and he put the date of the notes when he'd written them, even though it was a while after the things had actually happened, because from a court point of view, if it takes ages to get to court, well, the memory is going to be even worse. So by putting the date of the notes, they're fresher and they're more likely to be correct. And what also happened is, very fortunately, it was a community area, and there was a community organisations and other customers, and lots of people were willing to be character references, not just write letters, but also go into court to say all the things that this person's saying about how he's like a dodgy geezer and all the rest of it weren't true, because he was a good, honest painter and so on. And what he did is he put all his notes, all his character references, all the WhatsApp evidence about how the person was contradicting himself, and created a bundle. And it was a lot of information. And he sent it to the customer saying, if you don't pay this county court claim that I've filled in, so I'm not just pretending I'm going to do it, I am going to do it, I put the work in. If you don't pay within 14 days, I'm going to send this off to court. He also said that even if you do pay, I won't give the court a letter of satisfaction because I don't want to go to court, I'm not satisfied, which means the black mark on your credit score from getting a county court judgment will also not be removed. And that's a big deal to have a black mark on your credit score, especially for someone who's rich and maybe did need credit. But the big one that was very clever, really, really clever, is that these people often know if the bailiffs come, they don't let the bailiffs in. They say all their stuff there is tools of the trade, and so there's not a lot the bailiffs can do. And the lawyer said, make sure you make it clear before you go to court that you'll be doing a charging order, which means the court will get the money from the property. So if he gets a mortgage, it can be seen that a percentage of the value of this property is owed to the painter. If he wants to sell it, he doesn't get the money from the solicitors and things from the sale until he's paid the painter. And if he doesn't pay the money, it can even force him to sell his property. Now, this takes a lawyer a bit to do, and it's a bit of hard work. And again, I don't know the details, I'm not a lawyer. But the interesting thing is, being a rich person who kind of didn't have a job so that they couldn't sort of get the court to say, oh, from the salary, just deduct a bit. The guy sort of thought he would just do whatever he wanted, and that probably scared him. And interestingly enough, loads of people in the local community hated this guy, and he really wasn't liked because of how he behaves. And he wasn't really scared of the court thing. But it seems to be what scared him was seeing this massive thick bundle and the large amount of time it would take. Because he'd have to go through all this, he'd probably have to go to court, he'd probably have to defend it, and the large amount of time. And a result of that, he paid. Now, even the lawyer said actually this was unlikely to work. And it could have been a lot worse, because what often happens is that people like this, you communicate with them and they just don't reply. And they just are presuming you're not going to do anything, and they don't reply to anything. And it's only until you actually are literally about to go to court, it's often apparently called on the steps of the court, that it's actually kind of agreed. So it worked. But there were massive, massive lessons, which is now he has terms and conditions. He very carefully goes through the terms and conditions and has analysed the terms and conditions of lots of painting decorating companies going, oh, I like what's in there and I like what's in there and I'm going to do this. At the end of every day, he wants to meet the customer. And if the customer isn't around to be met, he takes photos, takes notes, and just sends the customer a report. And at the end of it says, please do say if you disagree with any of this or you think I've got it incorrect. It's a polite way of having it that from a court point of view, the customer's been given the opportunity to reply at the moment and hasn't left it hanging. and things like that. And what was nice though, what was really nice is this painter and decorator was a good person and had generated such goodwill with his customers that they were willing to do this for him. A lot of people kind of wouldn't be bothered. Painters and decorators just often don't have that goodwill, but this guy did, because he did it from the love and the care, and the customers appreciated that. He was also the kind of person that did a bit extra. So if he was doing a room and the hallway was the same colour and the same paint, and he noticed there were like marks in it, he'd say to the customer, oh, I'll just go and do that bit for you for free. And that created incredible goodwill because people felt it wasn't just a businessman trying to make money, he actually cared. So I really hope those lessons are useful for you. Interestingly enough, this doesn't just happen to rich people using this scam of sort of pretending things aren't good enough. It happens to all kinds of people, very often middle class people and sort of middle income people. Often actually, I found in my business and people I've spoken to say those people are more scared if you do send them letters and it doesn't have to go so far. And sadly, it does also happen with people who have very low incomes and hire painters knowing full well they can't pay. And that's awful. So it isn't just because the guy was rich, and I'm not going anywhere there. But what was interesting is that because this guy was very wealthy, he had access to very good lawyers. That the painter wasn't just going up against sort of little things. It was very clear this guy had very good lawyers, was doing this a lot, and actually almost didn't need his lawyers because he'd done it so often, had gone through so many painters, so many decorators, so many services, and really knew how to scam the system. Which is what makes this a great case study, to make sure you have really good systems so you can demonstrate to a court that you're not like this, and you can really make sure that you've got the protections of terms, conditions and so on. Because what normally happens is the customer can see beforehand that they're going to lose because everything is done correctly and there's no wriggle room, and so actually you don't have to go to court. I really hope this is useful. I'm learning all the time, and from the comments you've done on previous videos, I've learned loads and loads. Please do say your thoughts. I really want to learn from you, which is why I'm putting these out there as well. I hope it's useful for you. Please do subscribe to the channel. I hope you find these useful, and I hope to see you soon.